Welcome to Red Ice Creations Radio. This is Henrik Palmgren, and this is our internet talk radio show recorded from the west coast of Sweden. You can tune in every Thursday and Sunday for our regular program, and do take advantage of our subscriber section if you want to have full access to our archive of radio shows. You'll find all the information on how to subscribe and be a part of Red Ice Creations on our website, redicecreations.com. And this is the third Thursday of June, and that means that we have our regular monthly guest, Michael Tessarion, with us. MichaelTessarion.com, originsandoracles.com, and taroscopes.com are the website that you should check out right away if you're new to Michael and his work. And today we are going to spend some time talking about sorcery and magic. So, what is magic? Is it mind over matter, or matter over mind? Is it having control over others? Is it having control over yourself? Is it being in harmony with what is? Or is it anything which impacts you on all levels at once, energetically, emotionally, mentally and spiritually? And Michael, almost in all your DVDs, presentations and writings, there is a central theme of the conflict between sorcery and magic. And today maybe we can dive deeper into this. It seems that you mention a lot that the world is under influence of some very powerful sorcerers, either if it's through the subversive use of symbolism, through the media. We have brainwashing and mind control techniques, we have cults and fashions, or even pharmacopoeia, right?
Right. And thank you for having me on again and covering this particular theme, as you say, because it is a big theme in my work. I've long wanted to really get into it in greater depth. I don't think it's something that people are too familiar with, because again, people tend to have a very false understanding, especially of what magic is meant to be, the way that magic has been portrayed in books and the movies and so on. And it's, it's not so good to always break things down to two simple components, I guess, but I'm a believer that most of the secrets of life are simple. We know that politicians break things down simply, but that's because they don't want you to think. I do want people to think, but I think it's accurate to break things down into polar opposites in this way. Life has been described as a great game of chess, the conflicts that exist. And sorcery equals magic, or sorcery versus magic is my particular way of categorizing the world's problems. I've always seen it that way. I grew up, my mentors were people like George MacDonald, C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, who definitely helped me understand that you can divide the world into those categories, of sorcery. Of course, when I mean sorcery, I mean a perversion of magic, a perversion of natural operations of the universe. But we have to also connect it with what I've said so many times before, is that if there is such a thing, as sorcery in the world, we have to sort of understand not that it exists, but how did it come into existence? Why is it there?
So in a way, this is about, we talked about this earlier, this is an expression, if we were to compare sorcery versus magic, or the differences between them. We talked a little bit about the inauthentic life, and of course the ego and how recent that is, and so forth, and even the loss of self. And I guess you would attribute this more to the sorcery aspect of the problem, or how we should view it, than the magical aspect of it. And why not dive into talking a little bit more about sorcery right away, and kind of define what that is and how it works and so forth?
Well, sure, and you hit the nail on the head, because again, if something exists in our world, it's good to know that it exists, but why does it exist? You have to be also under sorcery. Somebody can be manipulating you, but you also have to be susceptible to that manipulation. So my job is not really to pull down the sorcerers from their ivory towers, in that type of let's storm the ivory tower situation. It's more about letting people wake up themselves. The sorcerers are put out of business the moment that you cease to be under their sorcery. My mind goes back to the very, very, very fantastic scene in the movie Conan the Barbarian. I wish people would actually go and watch that movie with educated eyes, in which the anti-hero, of course anti-heroes are always very interesting people, he's describing to Conan, the protagonist, how much power he has and that it's not the power of the sword or the steel. Particularly it's the power of the flesh or the hand that wields it.
Yeah.
And to demonstrate this, he literally calls one of their followers, who throws herself off the tower and jumps to her death. When he beckons her, and then he turns to Conan and says, "That is power. This is power." So, okay, if you're a self, well, you ain't going to be jumping from no high tower. You're going to go, "Hey, mate, go stuff yourself. You go and jump." But if you're willingly, in whatever way, wanting to be manipulated, you can be led by the nose.
Yeah.
You'll see tiny little children, no more than 3 or 4 years of age, in India, leading these ginormous buffaloes, the size of which would almost astound you. Enormous buffaloes by the nose. A little 3-year-old kid with a stick, can prod these along. You'll even see them prodding elephants along. So, the size of the human race. Anyone who studied, secret societies know that the Albert Pikes and the Sidney Webbs of the world, they look at the whole world as one neck for one leash. They're not, dissuaded by numbers. Did it look to you that the Bolshevik, government setup was worried that Russia was one of the largest countries in the world, or that there was so many people, how are we going to control them? Nothing could have been easier. They just used the right talismanic words, and the crack the right size whip, and everything happens. So the sorcery is absolutely dependent on people being fragmented. And I've said it so many times, it's the fundamental key of my work, but it definitely bears repeating, is that how did that fragmentation come into existence? I believe that 13,000 years ago, and down through the different millennia from them, there has been humongous changes in the world, awful spectacles of devastation that have traumatized not only individuals but entire tribes. I've even gone to the length of saying that what we know to be consciousness, the human ego, as you were hinting there, is a very recent creation. Most people don't think about thought. Most people don't think about consciousness. They just think they have it every morning. They never even question what is thinking. They don't question, here we are trying to affect the world and we don't even know what thought is. What is the anatomy of the ego? You can tell that a body can be defined by a torso, a head, 2 arms and 2 legs, and a hand is defined by a palm and 5 fingers, or a species of butterfly. Everything has an anatomy, but consciousness has no anatomy. Of course it does. But what is that anatomy? What are the divisions of consciousness? What is ego? My reading of it is that ego is a form of consciousness that was created out of trauma. But it was created out of trauma, which means it's terribly weak. It's terribly fragmented. It has incredible capacities. It has unbelievable focus and strength in many ways, but it's also at its root very, very weak and very shaky. And therefore, a shaky edifice, anything that has inherent impotency, can be controlled. Can be manipulated. Habitat can be influenced. An animal need not even know that its habitat is being influenced, but its behavior, its attitudes of life, its entire actions, waking actions, can be manipulated by the slow manipulation of its habitat outside its peripheral vision. A gorilla or ants or any kind of, we accept that this happens in life when it comes to animals. How come we don't accept? Will the human race ever wake up? I wish that the human race could just get as far to accept a simple premise, and that there is environmental ambient control taking place that you're not aware of. Teaching, instruction happens one-to-one, right? You're manipulated in school. Well, there's your teacher. You can see the teacher. The parents instruct you as to how to do this, that, and the other. That's one-to-one. The military boot camp major is going to tell you how it happens. What you're going to do. This is in-your-face control. Signposts in the street. But we've got to realize that there's this other kind of control. And the human race needs to wake up to realize that these subtle forms of control, and why they're also successful. So the weak ego, I believe, is, let's put it another way, the lack of selfhood. The lack of selfhood that has arisen is your responsibility. So yes, there's the responsibility of the sorcerer and those who think that they have the right to control your life. That's a huge problem in life. But I want to focus much more in my work on the fact that individuals are permitting this to happen by their, their own weakness, their inner split, their inner division.
Their search for an external safety or an external a component in reality that is more structured in a way, maybe. The
scaffolding. What happens to a rotten mansion when it's going to crumble down? You immediately got to prop it up. We've talked before about those famous Salvador Dali paintings in which you see these big, masks, the fleshy faces propped up on these little crutches, you know.
Yeah.
And we know that a person who's, you know, got problems with weak legs, you know, they'll put on the stabilizers and what have you. So man is itching psychologically for these stabilizers. That's what Dali was talking about, that man needs psychological braces. I want to take those braces off. You're not going to talk about any kind of social or constitutional freedom. You're not going to hammer it into existence legally or constitutionally if it's not inside a man internally.
Yeah. So there's a need for it, also in a way.
And there's the need for the scaffolding, for you're talking. Is that what you mean? That there's a need for this bracing?
Yeah, exactly. And also, you know, now the potential discovery of this, and also the removal of it, that when people feel insecure and so forth, that this is obviously a good thing, you know.
But I want to see that insecurity. I'd much rather see the insecurity of a child who is learning the miracle of riding a bike when the stabilizers are taken off. As much trepidation and potential, you know, fear of danger. I'd rather see that because it's coupled with learning. It's coupled with the exhilaration of now being able to take the, you know, the stabilizers off and have that fantastic experience of riding your bicycle at full pelt. You know, it's a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
I'd rather see that trepidation than the cowering trepidation of a scared, impotent, fragile, you know, schizophrenic individual cowering under the staircase of the mansion that belongs to them, shivering in the corner of the palace that, you know, that they need to begin exploring, which is the palace of being, the palace of the self. You know, because the seventh wonder of the world and the first wonder of the world is the self, and every form of sorcery and every form of anti-magic, every Sauron, you know, every Saruman, every demonic politician or entity or priest or politician or pope or pharaoh who is hell-bent on the control of human minds wants to erase selfhood and is an artist, an artisan, a specialist, a technocrat, an absolute skilled artificer of the methods of entropy. There's not one, you see, knife that, you know, eviscerates selfhood. It's many. It's a machinery. It's a toolkit. It's 101 ways of doing it, and that's what this, you know, that's what my work has been all about. Is that in some way try to address these tools in the same scientific way that anyone would want to do. If you're studying any particular thing, like a computer, you've got to only not study what the computer is, but what are the viruses that could attack those programs? You see, because you know, you may make a wonderful computer, the greatest programs in the world. You may creatively do that. But then you also have to defend it against those pathogens that could erase your work.
So we have obviously, you know, a physical immune system and so forth, but there is also a psychological immune system, I guess, then.
And that's the most important one of all. And it's the least taken care of. In fact, should a psychologist, it's within the realm of psychology that you find people who are the greatest warners, people who've tried to strengthen our immune system psychologically are basically psychologists, with a few philosophers thrown in. Nobody wants to listen to them. They're considered cranks themselves. As soon as you start talking about self-food, as soon as you start talking about psychological immunity or psychic sovereignty or psychic hygiene, as I like to put it, you're completely ignored. Artie Lang, Freud, the list goes on. They've not only chronically misinterpreted what these people have said, they've misinterpreted them, they've mistranslated them, and they have, well, of course, they go up against the sorcerers. So the sorcerers want to diss these people as fast as possible. And all sorts of negative labels, you see, will be put on them. Anyone, I don't care if it's a poet, I find that some of the greatest people who talk about selfhood and the strength of selfhood are from within the musical community. I think to me as an astrologer, that's not a surprise, because the planet, I don't want to get into it right now, but the whole planetary rulerships of music is very connected to the planet Pluto and great interchange. Psychological change is ruled by the planet Pluto, but Pluto is very akin to Uranus, the planet of music. You know, so I don't want to get more long-winded about that, or we take up the whole show. But people who've watched the Future of Mankind web stream that we did, we went into that a little bit more. So from within the musical community, even dating back to the time of Paganini and you know, Liszt, and certainly Beethoven jumps to mind, there's been this revolutionary spirit, very, very strong revolutionary spirit. I guess even within Stravinsky, you know, and then up into the modern genre. So coming out of music, coming out of art, because again, you know, what is art? What is music? It's stuff that strengthens your creativity.
Yeah, and it is creativity, or an expression of your creativity.
Your selfhood. Yeah. This is because the creative person has an idea of self. So if people are wondering why there's not that much creativity around today, there's a reason. It's because it also has to go south because self is going south. Collectivism is in, individualism is out. And but going back to the very important thing of the misnomers, the fallacies, the phony way that magic is presented to us as some sort of wand-waving thing, or that magic and sorcery is based on gaining power. You're a secret little Wicca cult, and you dabble and light candles and incense because you're secretly wanting sexual power or, mundane power.
Yeah.
This has got to go. The magic and sorcery I'm talking about has nothing to do with that. In fact, sorcery specifically is not born out of egohood, but the opposite. It's born out of the selflessness again. Watch Star Wars. Darth Vader, as powerful a magician, a sorcerer as he is a puppet of the Emperor. Yeah. The Emperor is a puppet of the dark side of the Force. Saruman, Sauron, they don't even show in the book or the film Sauron. Sauron's an empty, all his legions, right? The orcs are faceless minions, aren't they?
Yeah.
Without individuality. His riders, the 9 riders, the 9 kings, are literally faceless ghosts. They're even known by the name of Wraith, which second translation means nothing, an emptiness. An emptiness. Thulsa Doom and Conan the Barbarian talks about the great emptiness. So people have to get this out of their mind that any kind of magic, dark magic, dark sorcery is sort of an expression of my selfhood, my egohood. It's a lack of self. So these George Bushes and Cheneys and Thatchers, you see, and all these people that I consider sorcerers, who are in slavery to this form of sorcery, are selfless. It's not. We've got it completely run the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, sure, a little tiny person can cast a big shadow, so we may be thinking the shadow is enormous. But the fact of the matter is that, no, these people have lost themselves. I think we spoke about this on another show, in which you can look at it in 2 ways. Either these people are possessed by dark sorcery, or that they've let go of their selfhood into the sorcery. They've immersed themselves in the ocean of nothingness, of that nirvanic, that obsession, that drive, you see. But either way, it is a selfless entity that deals in sorcery. The person who's of self would never ever deal in it because it deals in the manipulation of other people. And if you're a self, how would you want to do that? Didn't Socrates say to harm another is to harm oneself?
Yeah.
Crowley also spoke about that if I hurt another, I awaken the pitch, right?
Yeah.
Every pitch awakens its, similar pitch.
Speaking of Crowley, I mean, he spoke of course, the will, or will under law. I don't know if that's correct.
Love under will.
Yeah, love under will, and that will is the most important thing, and will in a sense then is an expression of your individuality, that you have a strive for something or a wish or an ambition or a goal or even creativity, I guess.
Well, he spoke of a Greek concept, thelema, which is the Greek for will, and it just turned out, if I can remember correctly, that in Greek, the word for will and the word for love, I think, equal the same in numerology. They equal the same number or something like that. So he found this link, and when he was talking about will, of course, the phrase you're thinking about is "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law."
Yeah, that's right. Of course, yeah.
That's what it was. The word for law and the word for will were the same, or something like that. The values. Okay. He was working with occult principles there, and what he basically realized was it's not your individual will that is separate from the universal order. Your will must be brought into harmony with the universal order. That's what thelema really means. It's balance.
Okay.
But you see, it wasn't some sort of hippieite will in which you just did whatever the hell you felt like. It was a will that was also overseen by virtue. He was talking about morally superior beings, people who are virtuous. And as we said on other shows, virtue is not just the repetitive performance of good deeds, as you've been instructed, but your inner self is screaming inside, virtue is born absolutely from within you. It's not just the performance of roles. So he was from within the roles. So yeah, there's different interpretations of the will. We will always hear the black propaganda from the sorcerers telling us that it's all about the will, it's all about me, the right of the individual, when in fact they're erasing that very thing. And of course they perform, these husks, these Saurons, these wizards of evil, they will perform as if they are strutting individualists. They'll give us the sense that, the Pope, the President, what strong, mighty individuals they are riding their white horses. That's all fakery. These are husks.
People put in front of us and the bow down, I guess, to the hierarchy or the system itself, and then if you go, as you say, further up top all the time, you find a kind of a faceless character or a non-existent character.
Absolutely. There's a movie we talked about movies before, and I didn't really go into my own personal favorite films in one of our interviews, but certainly if people would watch the movie Zardoz with Sean Connery, this will be highly explained, that the further you go up the ladder, the more, in fact they even verbally expound upon this within the movie, that when the hero of the movie actually finds the secret of life, he finds that it was behind a faceless, that God in fact was a faceless entity. That it was just a mask. He had been led. He had been led on a false journey, as the whole world is. And the fact of the sorcery is interesting to me, but the response of those who are under the power of the sorcery is actually more interesting to me. Why the bowing? Why the genuflecting? Why the acceptance of this? And that, I've understood that completely. It's not a mystery to me. As R.D. Laing said, insanity is a perfectly normal, response to an insane environment or whatever. I understand that the ego is incredibly fragile. The ego is born yesterday. It's extremely young. So it acts in exactly the same way as a teenager. Brilliant and scintillating, but highly neurotic and schizophrenic as well. So, and just controlled by its drives, completely out of control in many ways. So once you understand that the ego has been repeatedly traumatized, then you understand how come it is then that even in historical time, the human race continues to be traumatized by those we calling the sorcerers. In fact, it's a hallmark of sorcery. I can call these people, these politicians and leaders and religious potentates, sorcerers with absolute accuracy, because they're defined by acts of terrorism on the earth. Because they know what we don't know. They know what I'm saying right now, and that is the human ego is traumatized. Its existence is born from trauma, from a primal trauma. What better way then to make sure that there's never any peace or ease, you see, or luxury for the ego, to perpetually every 10 years or so repeatedly traumatize it again. Not every 10 years, it's happening every day. The news is enough to traumatize most people's psyche, you see.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So, but again, this application of sorcery is a hallmark. Those who start to study this criminal, again, my mind goes to the movie Murder by Decree, where the fantastic statement there is, in the pursuit of criminals, one learns their devices. As he's swiping the Masonic ring from the finger of the head mason, right? Very loaded statement there. But what he's really saying is that as you start to study the criminal, not just know that some sort of criminal exists out there, but to actually trail them, to start tracking them, to find out, like a hunter, how these people operate, what's their scent, what footmarks do they leave. Then you start to realize that they leave a trail of trauma behind them. They're always thinking about how to further traumatize you. And your civilization, so that keeps you, susceptible to their control. This is one of the ways that they work.
Definitely, and we have again, we can bring in the terrorism into this, of course. Governments performing, terrorism against its own nation or its own people in a way to further, I guess, then traumatize the people so they can keep the structure or hierarchy within society and keeping people afraid and I guess.
That's right. Keep the salad tossed all the time, and we're living knee deep now in what I'm talking about. When I see times like have come upon us, since, well, of course, depends how you look at it. From an American context, from a world context, there's been nothing but trauma. History is nothing but a lexicon of trauma, and, a catalog of it. But the most recent one that people will kind of go, oh yeah, I recognize that, is the 9/11 thing, and that 9/11. 911 is the emergency, it's incredible, the emergency numbers on the phone.
Right there.
So we are in it. This is not just it happened in 2001. It has never stopped happening.
Yeah.
It is perpetual. And it's a formula that is repeated over and over again once you have the eyes to see it. And people who study, for instance, the Masonic structure, again, these people the hunters who've been on the scent, have discovered the ordo ab chaos concept, right?
Yeah.
Order out of chaos, better described as the dialectic. How on earth could a dialectic or this interplay of opposites ever work unless the mind itself was divided? See, these divisions don't exist in the world in themselves as much as they exist in consciousness. So when I talk about ego being split or ego being divided or fragmentary, one can simplify it by just thinking that the mind divided into two halves. Meaning the mind is inherently fractured. Just like you take a piece of quartz crystal and you smash it, and it's fractured. There's nothing more, you can never join those pieces together again. All that can now happen is there's some dialogue, between those two aspects of the self. So man is in conflict within himself. And the sorcery is inside, as it is outside. Because again, there has to be a puppet in order to have strings.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So the puppet is also disjointed. And the mind itself is split and divided. And this, you find these divisions in mythology as Christ and Satan. You see as Osiris and Set. Right? You find it in the Arthurian legends, you see, between Tristan and Mark, or, Arthur and Mordred, who's his own son, you see, so they're always showing you the connection. You find it in astrology and the famous oppositions of astrology. You find it in gender world as the masculine and feminine proclivities. You find it in philosophy as the karma and the dharma. For people who don't know what that is, it just means authentic and inauthentic lives. Dharma being authentic life, your vocation, as opposed to your role. Karma is nothing more than your role.
Okay, yeah.
The confined role in which you conform your life, and which society, remember again the braces? Yeah. For people who don't understand what the scaffolding is, you should know, because if you're in a role, that's the scaffolding. You're not a person, you're not a human being, you're a mother, a father, a daughter, a brother. You see, an uncle, a cousin, a lover, a wife, a husband. You're one of the team. You're the center forward, or the, you're the goalkeeper. You see, or wasn't there that movie? What was that movie?
I think about The Guardian, or
yeah. People should watch the Kevin Costner movie, The Guardian. Or any other movie like that, Officer and a Gentleman, that show you that your role is, your function and your role is what matters, not you.
Yeah.
In fact, it's openly shown to you that the you is of no use to us. We're here to erase your you-ness. Leave that at the door, become the complete and utter role, and your function is what society wants from you, not your self-expression.
Yeah.
So Crowley called it Nuth and Hadith, meaning the opposites. The Maya and the Aztec call it Nagual and the Tonal. William Blake referred to it as the prolific and the devouring, two aspects. Of course, in the East they talk about the yin and the yang.
Yeah.
You can see it in Freud, where he had his permissive and prohibitive aspects of the ego, making it more clear to Western people what that means. He also referred to it as eros and thanatos, meaning a life instinct and a death instinct. So again, this is very, very important in psychology, that the mind has two drives that work against each other.
Yeah.
The life instinct and the death instinct. Biophilic and necrophilic. Necrophilia, what necrophilia really is a death instinct.
Yeah.
Physicists will know it as the centripetal and centrifugal energies, pulling out and pulling towards, you see.
The atoms and
the universe works in this way. In Buddhism, or not Buddhism, but Hinduism, they talk about the satyam, which is reality, and the asatyam, which is unreality, two principles. You're starting to hear it now coming out of the probably New Age metaphysical world, where you have hierarchy versus holarchy.
Yeah.
It's not really from the New Age movement, it's actually from quantum science, where they really discovered that there's these two polarized worldviews.
Yeah.
Of course, most people will be familiar with the quantum theory about whether it's a pulse or a wave.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And the beauty of all of that, you see, is centered in the beauty of all of that is centered in it's both given your perception. So see how the self comes into this?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
And it's affecting, as in quantum physics, of course, that it's you, the observer, or the part of it that actually, influences, depending on if it is a particle, or is it a wave, and even where it is. I mean, it's you, or the individual that is looking upon it, that actually is the contributing force, to influence it.
Exactly. What they found out, which of course they were hoping they would never find out, scientists claiming that they're objective, suddenly they've come right up against this subjective philosophy, and that your looking, your existence, your function changes matter, reality.
That's amazing.
They didn't like that. They did not like that at all, because science has always been priding itself on there is no subjective reality, it's all objective. You can come across objective truth.
And as a scientist, you always try to remove yourself in a way
So-called.
from the, you know, when you conduct the experiment or whatever, you know.
And then they find that there is no experiment without the you. Oh my God. In fact, you are affecting the experiment. You know, mystics could have told them that. You know, the shamans, pre-logical shaman could have told them that.
Yeah.
You know, but this is what Heisenberg discovered. This is what ended up, you know, Schlesinger and all of them discovered, is that the very act of looking affects not only the atoms on the subatomic level. You know, an atom is 1/1000th of an inch across. 1/1000th of an inch is an atom, and subatoms, which is what they were discovering at this point, are 100,000s of times smaller than that. So from the smallest, but see, it took science, it took man to go to the smallest components of matter to understand how consciousness is affecting reality.
That's
Right?
interesting. Yeah.
It's just that we're up here in the macro level of reality, so it doesn't appear that your thoughts are affecting matter. But Crowley and the magicians all knew, of course it is. And magic may be, I'm not saying it is, but let's one interpretation of magic, of course, centers upon this ability to change matter.
Control matter, and yeah.
And of course, in the New Age movement, they're always talking about prosperity think. You know, about the way you think changes reality, and I'm a big, you know, supporter of that belief. I absolutely do believe that. Always have believed that.
Your intention and what you
Yes.
focus upon, and
Yes.
what you attract as
Absolutely.
a human. And, yeah.
We just had a discussion on the forum recently about that. About, you know, who are these people telling us that we have, you know, no control over, you know, or Scientology, or somebody telling us that I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were all just hopeless victims.
Yeah.
You know, in the sea of the world, and unless we follow some beacon or some leader, you know, we're lost.
Yeah.
Total nonsense. I don't believe in that, you know. And so, you know, William Blake had said it before: when the doors of perception are cleansed, man sees things as they truly are, infinite. But man can see things as they truly are, infinite. First of all, must be infinite in his consciousness. Man must first see himself in that way. So the sorcery is that which tries to prevent you from ever discovering your infinitude. If it can have you narrow, confined to roles, regimented, conformatized, just like the Guardian movie shows you. And believe me, that's a religion with them. That's not something they're willing to negotiate. You don't have a choice. When you're working with the status quo in the system, you better conform to the role. Otherwise, you're a non-existent. They'll put you in the madhouse, they'll lock you up, or they'll leave you on the lower realm of the class system
Yeah.
to end up in the streets. They're not going to argue about it. There's no humming and hawing. You either play the game and you buy into the role, or you will be a vagrant as far as society is concerned.
Yeah.
Look at the Guardian. You'll only get the girl, right, once you've got the uniform. You got the rank, you get the girl. You get promotion, you've got the girl. So, you know, at the end of even, that's one criticism of National Treasure, is at the end, he gets the car, he gets the mansion, and he gets the house after he got the gold, you know. So this Hollywood is all very linear.
Yeah.
It's not getting psychologically advanced or spiritually enlightened or morally pure. It's getting the gold, it's getting material, it's getting the rank and the status, it's getting Big Brother's approval.
Yeah.
And once you get the pat on the back, you can take that big deep breath, and everyone will applaud, you see, and the collective has accepted you now. Your role is established. Because you're not what they call inner directed, you're outer directed. You have no psychic sovereignty. So the approval of others, be it even one other, or the approval of the many, now matters extraordinarily. Your whole life and your whole sanity rests or falls on the approval of other people. And since the reality is that you don't get approval from most people, that just happens to be a physical fact, well then, of course, now the neurosis begins. Because now you're so dependent on the approval of others, what happens if you don't get it? Well, then you end up like most people are walking around today.
You fall apart.
You fall apart.
Yeah.
Whereas Ayn Rand, you know, one of my mentors, would have responded to that by going, if you are a person who's already of merit, why do you need to be decorated? If you have done something for another that is what you wanted to do, and truly was of value in itself, you don't need their approval or their thanks.
Yeah.
Get sorry out of your vocabulary. Get thank you out of your vocabulary. If if you did something that was for the right, it doesn't matter if another human being knows about it. It's the gift you've given yourself. If they say thank you, that's absolutely fantastic. That's their right. But you're not psychologically dependent on them saying
on receiving that.
It's polite to say that in society, or to respond, of course. These are normal or mercurial responses. There's no problem. But you're not neuroticized if I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, what is happening. So we have now got, this is all what we talked about in previous shows about the, the inauthentic life. These are the trappings of the inauthentic life. Once you're confined to these roles, this is where you're going to be at. And like we said, the yin and the yang, the pulse and the wave, The Greeks talked about the logos and Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
Again, right brain, left brain.
Mm.
And the way power versus love.
Yeah.
My article, Weapons of Mass Deception Found, goes into the power versus love. Power is in the place of love, and love is in the place of power. So when you see a sorcerer, you see an addict of power.
Interesting.
That's it. Obsessed and addicted to power. Power is where love should be. And they want to infect you with their infection. As now the whole world is becoming infected. Hitler's no good without a gang.
Yeah.
Bush is no good without an audience. He has to have psychopathic people around him, first of all to hide his own psychopathy. They're the tall grass in which the tiger hides, you see. And believe me, if you can have a whole culture of psychopaths, right, all the better.
Perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
The orcs, have all the orcs. Then you can be as faceless as you feel like.
So, if we talk about sorcery, do you think that it is invisible in a way? If this, sorcery that you talk about exists in that sense, how comes it works? Why don't people, oppose it or rebel against it if it's there? Is it?
Well, they're under infection. That's the first thing. And people like myself hopefully should be motivated to try and address people like a healer or whatever to the fact they're infected by these things. Remember, we talked about the fragility of the ego allows them to be so controlled and herded. I even go to the point of saying that we're not thinking with the mind, we're thinking for the mind. See, the mind is all about the collective. So even the ego you have is oriented or magnetized more to collectivism than it is to individualism. Individualism must be fought for. Sovereignty or hygiene must be gained. It doesn't come to you naturally. What comes to you naturally is dirt. If you leave fruit on the table, naturally it'll rot. If you leave your home, right, dust will gather. See, the natural function is for decrepitude and for dust and toxins to gather. Your effort is to get the gloves on, the detergent out, and the brushes and to clean. That takes effort. This is a work that the human race couldn't care less about anymore. So the toxins are building up. The human race has never cared for that. It's only a shamanic class that cares to, detoxify you and to work with hygiene, but they're all dead. So, in one way,
do you think that, speaking about the ego again as a recent, how should I say, effect on the consequences around us then from trauma and so forth, are we also in a immature situation now that we actually are? Is this process that we're going through now helping us in a way to actually get to know our ego and help to develop that and mature the ego in any way?
Yeah, you're talking about the fact that people are stressed within the inauthentic life?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, see, this is where I differ a lot from those people in other areas of this community, where I have no problem seeing all the harangue and the stress and the frustration and the sort of I look at that as very positive, because you shouldn't get comfortable with a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to see people burned out, stressed out, complaining, frustrated. I want to see those so-called darker emotions operating, because I know what those darker emotions are. Those darker emotions that you hate, you think is called hate and anger and loneliness, you see, and fear. Those are just terms. Those are, again, words that you have blocked your higher self. The higher self is working overtime to wake you up from a delirium. You're caught within the roles. You're caught within that scaffolding. You're caught in the cage of the inauthentic life. You are miles away from your dharma and your inauthentic existence. You've had everyone from your parents to your peers to your fellow friends, so-called friends, teachers, politicians, and priests, and the whole world erase your individuality. So of course you're going to be screaming inside. I don't want to medicate you. I don't want to create a new age cult where I can liberate you from your angst. I want to introduce you to your angst. That angst, right? What did Nietzsche say? Beware casting out your demons. You may be casting out the best part of you.
Yeah.
People think he was satanic, crazy. No, he was a philosopher who understood. Let's hope that those dark forces that are banging on your door get in.
So you can root it. It's a form of exorcism.
It's a form of catharsis, an exorcism.
Yeah.
You may be so personally traumatized that when they come in you die from shock. Well, too bad. That's the price we're willing to pay. But they're not killing you. You're killing yourself in fear of a shadow you don't understand. See, the unconscious always shines back the face that looks into it. That's why the greatest symbol of the unconscious is the mirror.
Yeah.
Because the face that the unconscious takes on, or they say more specifically, the face that the content of the unconscious takes on when it comes into consciousness, is predicated upon your own ego defenses. Meaning that what you look into is like this atomic level thing. The face that looks into the unconscious is reflected back. So if the face that's looking into the unconscious is fearful, pathological, toxic, scared, etc., content will take on that shape.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Even looking exactly, and we have come this far now in a way because of also the technological advancement through, that we have the means now to look into that deep down into atoms and go so far into it.
And what are they going to see when they get there?
Exactly, themselves. Yeah.
Now remember, if people find this concept hard to deal with, they explored it in Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, when they literally go in search of God. And when they get there, everybody sees a different God. Or the main hero in the show, the protagonist, doesn't see what he thought he saw. And luckily he wakes up to the point. He discovers that the God he's seeing is a projection of his own self. It's beautifully, that's why the movie is very positive, is because the person discovers his own insanity at that point. He realizes, oh my God, I created this myself. So we are doing that. So I am very much a person who looks at all of this social confusion, worldly confusion. I don't like to see people medicating themselves. I don't want people to run away from it. Well, I know why they're doing it. You see, people are already in an escape from the real. So people go, we're providing escapes. The media provides escapes. No, you're already in escape. Your whole life is an escape from the real. So your medicating yourself and finding escapes and finding deviations from this horrible cage that you're in is also natural. Of course you would want to escape from it. All I'm saying to people is to escape from it totally. Because remember, part of the sorcery, this is the theme of our show here, is that the sorcery is to keep you within the cage, but giving you the illusion that it's okay to be in the cage because we'll offer you a bunch of false freedoms. What would you call it? The illusion of freedom.
Yeah.
So, and they'll lay on anything as long as the door remains locked. And you don't really ask for the key.
Yeah.
Right? Because they know that people will get frustrated sitting in a corner of the room or hiding under the balcony, hiding under the staircase. So there's an incredible manufacture of stimuli for that person who does not believe that they are in control of their lives. And remember, you asked why is this happening? It's because there's a certain kind of safety within the cage. Within that prison, there's a certain kind of, safety and security.
No, of course, yeah.
This is Patrick McGowan points this out in his Prisoner series, that people are very happy to be in there because everything's provided, everything's laid on.
Yeah. No need to ask any questions, you don't need to go off on a tangent and, protest against evil governments or whatever. Everything you want to have is basically a little bit within your reach, if it's a new car or PlayStation or whatever it might
everything.
be.
Everything will be laid on. Everything from A to Z will be laid on. In the Prisoner series, they say questions are a burden and answers a prison for oneself. Don't think. Stop your. We'll just make it pleasure, pain, less work, more play. No, more. This era it'll be more play, less work. So it's very cut down, very small, and those reward mechanisms, merit. Remember in the Guardian movie, merit. Get that badge.
Yeah.
Get that badge. Eviscerate your selfhood and get that award. And stop your own processes. Repress and society suppresses you, but you repress yourself. And so when we talked about the divisions there, yin and yang, eros, logos, Sophia, logos. There's also another one, which is repression, suppression. You repress yourself, and society suppresses you. So there's another two forms, you see. And people get happy with this kind of regression and this conformity. And this kind of conformity is in everything you look at, from the cars now to the houses, the boxes people live in, the foods that they're given to eat, even the so-called and then there's these so-called escapes from it, which is the new cults, the new fashions that people think, oh, that's so much expression of my individuality. Okay, created by who? Benetton and Ralph Polo Lauren and Tommy Hilfiger. They're going to create your image for you now?
Yeah. And
you're claiming to be an individual? Good God, what kind of delusion or poisoning are people under?
Yeah. So this is an art, it seems like, of the controllers, or the social engineers to keep this cage of the inauthentic life, as we talked about, the illusion of freedom and all of that. But this is an art that has been, I guess, developed over, I don't know if we should say millennia or hundreds of years or whatever, to provide you with all the entertainments and things that you can escape into. But this art, as it were, do you think that also connects with the fact that, because we talked about this, about there is no need for the clamp down or the the total annihilation of the population, or a hands-on kind of we actually go to the lengths where you suppress the population through a military action or something like that, because we, in a way, I guess we live in the perfect society for the controllers now, because everything is in place to keep the to sustain the way we live now, right?
Yep. War on consciousness, perception control, perception management, opinion control. The real adroit war, and I'm not saying that people within the power hierarchy don't want to go out and just murder and kill. They've tried that in the past. But we're now in an era in which it's thought control.
Yeah.
It's consensus trance. It's perception management. So much more subtle, forms of control. This is the art. And you're talking, yes, this art of manipulation, this art of... See, the sorcerers have to not only create the cage, create the inauthentic life, they have to sustain it and prolong it. Creating it is one thing, but you create something, somebody else can take it down 5 minutes later. So it's much more than just creating inauthentic life and all these roles and all of this this religious stuff and that's going on in the world. They have to maintain it and update it. This is a whole thing to be continually revamped and made.
Expand it maybe into the areas that you potentially want to go into, or offer you, let's say that you have a need for something and a grassroots movement within society, right. And they can offer a counter solution to that, revamp, as you say.
Inauthentic forms of freedom. We're talking about inauthentic life. We're talking about the cage of the inauthentic person. Well, can't they then invent an inauthentic version of freedom?
Yeah, definitely.
It's so easy. I mean, people who've checked out the work of Edward Bernays, and the whole manufacturing of consent and the engineering of consent and how you take people's inner desires, you see, and manipulate those. Because remember, if there, I've always said it from day one, if you find that there is something impeding a man's spiritual progress, it is often not his own desire that's the problem. There's obstacles in his way. You got to remove those obstacles. You don't have the choice to re-hardwire the person. You can't instill what's not there. But you do have the right to remove the obstacles on the path in front of that person, or at least make them aware of those obstacles. But there's people who are putting obstacles in the way. They're creating this whole artifice, which is extremely elaborate. If people can just understand that it's very, very elaborate. And luckily, people I relate with, that talk on the forum or, come to my talks, they are starting to become very aware of just how elaborate this sustenance and maintenance of the lie is. It's very, very, ambient. It takes many forms.
So how about, other forms of, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, we have New Age movements, we have yoga, all kinds of religions, things to dive into. I guess that's maybe not as alternatives, but as more escapism, I guess.
Yeah, well, once you've got this Frankensteinian desire to enlarge the prison and create all these wonderful new features, more inauthentic forms to maintain and sustain this life of the roles coming, then of course, and I'm a believer, you see, that a great deal of the New Ageism, I can hardly be a critic of religion and then leave out the New Age movement.
Yeah.
So to me, the New Age movement and certainly Orthodox religion are all part of this. They know that man is searching for meaning. So they create religion to falsely pretend to be giving you that. The New Age movement is part of this. That again, man's craving to have a little bit more diversity, to know himself more. Oh yeah, so the non-self now desires to discover, see, you're in the role. You haven't budged from the role. You haven't budged a smegging inch from the role, but now you want to know what your true self is. Well, they'll manufacture that with all the guru wallas and all the Oriental, mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
And with again elements of truth,
Of course,
elements of
yeah,
truth, you
yeah.
know, little spattering of truth here, a little bit of there. It's a 70-30. And then you have this whole Dr. Strangelove, you know, concoction, which is the perfect creation. And I definitely even put yoga into that. I don't see anything healthy in any of that except what I would call is known as hatha yoga, which is sort of like exercises for the body. I'm okay with that, you know, form of yoga. But I believe that yoga is really technology of the ego. Remember we talked about the fragility of the ego? So the ego is always setting about trying to find some real way of cementing its own nature. The ego is in a million pieces. So one of its primal drives is to cement itself together. It happens in the dark behind our perception, but the ego is ever looking for that perfect cement to rebuild itself. It knows it's in pieces and it wants to get whole again. So what we know as Eastern mysticism, yoga, and I'm mentioning this very clearly because it's not the same as magic, which we're going to talk about later. Restructuring the ego, the fragmented ego, is not the role of magic. Right? It's another form of sorcery. It's another form of technology where something that is broken is now trying to be unbroken. But it doesn't question why it was broken in the first place. So yoga is a sort of super highway or super way of it's like weight training for the mind. Yoga is God, you know, we're weak, we're impotent, let's pump that muscle. Let's get into shape. So it's super toning, you know. That's what yoga is in its lower form. It's a technology of the ego. And in fact, I have a great quote from Mircea Eliade, who was one of the greatest commenters. He was like the Joseph Campbell before the Joseph Campbell. If people haven't heard of Mircea Eliade, they certainly need to. And in his wonderful books, he wrote this. He said, "The childish yogis can never find out their true natures. One has no need of tantra or mantra or of the images of the dharmanis." These are the inner images that come in front of people when they're meditating. All these are causes of confusion, he says. In vain does one try to attain moksha. Moksha means going beyond good and evil, transcending opposites. Remember, we've just been talking about all the opposites. Well, the Indian word for going beyond opposites is moksha, a state in which you're beyond opposites. But he's saying in vain does one try to attain moksha by meditation. All are hypnotized by the system of these jhanas, these meditations. But none cares to realize his own self. So he's saying that, you know, it's another distraction. It's another sit within your prison, but sit cross-legged and try to develop an inner world, you know, all this kind of thing. Jung said the same thing. All of the yogic techniques invite one and all the same gesture, to do exactly the opposite of what human nature forces one to do. I really want people to meditate on that. Jung is saying that yogic techniques invite you to do exactly the opposite of what human nature forces you to do.
That's interesting.
But man will buy into that, because as William Barrett said, as long as we remain in the womb of this externalized and public existence, meaning the roles, we are spared the terror and the dignity of becoming a self. So we are in the authentic world because we're running from selfhood. We don't want anything to do with selfhood. And therefore we'll buy into any other stimuli. So and these sorcerers, these puppeteers, puppet masters, are very much dreaming up new stimuli, because you are a person who's waiting for life to turn you on. And they're just willing to offer you those things that will turn you on. So you become mechanical, not a self, but an ego-based machine. This is what the problem is.
Striving for the oneness that we talked about into
externally.
Yeah.
In some external way, or in some sort of a lower ego way. The ego wants a certain kind of wholeness, yes, because it's fragmented. But that's not the same thing as selfhood. That's just rebuilding what was broken. You know.
So, what about Al Gore and the global warming cult? Another aspect
fashion
to all of this.
This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This, because I've always said that most things, you know, within the New Age movement is a fashion. You know, sort of. I remember in one previous show we were talking about what is not a fashion. Well, here we are knee deep in another fashion, which is highly an act of sorcery. What's going on with this Al Gore thing is a very, very skillful form of sorcery. You have the father figure, that's the head magician, the head Sauron up there, right? Waving his little, you know, wand and showing you how the earth is in terrible, terrible, you know, upheaval because of global warming. Something's heating up, you know. The world external to you is heating up. It's in terrible danger. This is offsetting what really needs to be done in this world right now, which is psychological change. People need to be doing what I'm talking about, which is looking at themselves, looking at their so-called darker emotions, and realizing that there's a great angst within, and letting that angst teach them, not running away from their pain and their sorrow and their angst, not medicating out of existence, but letting it speak to them as a voice, inviting it in, making friends with it. This is the true psychological development, so that they can gain a healthy inner dialogue. It's not the outer Earth that's heating up, it's the inner world. In my work on Pluto and the Holy Spirit, we are in a state now where we need to make vast inner transformations. Moving the bloody furniture on the Titanic isn't going to help. The source of all the external problems, be it global warming or other wars, are inside. If Wilhelm Reich was up on stage there, he'd be telling you that. It wouldn't be Al Gore. He'd be saying, Reich would be saying, listen, buddy, your psychology is out of whack. So the external world, and even the weather, because he was an expert on atomic things, and how the world of matter,
cloud busting and all of that.
He was an expert on exactly how matter mimics. Not right away, perhaps. It's an elaborate process. I talk about it in my DVDs. The elaborate process of how the Earth grid is involved in this. You see, chi, is known as chi, or ki, or fohat, in the East, prana. What we only know as energy, but there's earth energies, you see. So the process by which consciousness changes matter is an elaborate one, involving the dodecahedron, the earth grid, involving feng shui, geomancy. We can't get into all of this right now, but there's an elaborate process in which the world is a bigger brain. Once upon a time, our unconscious mind and the world were connected, and it still is connected on a subconscious level. So man's toxicity, man's inner landscape, his inner climate, his inner republic is in total disarray. The storms of violence and the upheavals and the changes that are coming, that a lot of people who don't know, haven't done their homework, believe are external in nature, are actually internal. There's tidal waves and tsunamis within, in your emotional, moral, landscape. So what do the sorcerers do? The last thing they want is for you to start taking responsibility over your inner landscape. They don't want you to have a self. They want to keep you outer-directed and have no psychic immunity or psychic sovereignty. So what do? They do this perfect act of psychological inversion in which they project the external problem, and they get you all to rally forth, waving your placards and sitting there with these, all ears to hear about the external problem.
And that might tie in with even the sense of gratification, that you actually are, the sense that you're doing something, that you're, fighting this, and that, again, gets you back in the comfort zone in a way.
And it's not you doing it, it's we are doing it. It's us. I don't have to do it, it's we. Look, I'm so secure with all these people. We're all facing front, There's Al telling us all about it. We had no clue. And we need Deepak Chopra, and we need Al Gore, and we need to get on this other bandwagon. There's a cult in the form, yet they're going to tell you that some little, weird voodoo cult down there is all evil, down in the dark places of the world, right? Or some little heavy metal, black death metal cult is so evil. Our kids are, terribly indoctrinated, and look where they're all sitting. There they all are, hypnotized by the great Magi, who's telling you that global warming is coming and the earth is in danger and ecology and all these talismanic words. And we love it because that is another escape. We don't have to look at who we are. We don't have to look at the inner landscape. Thank you, Al, for giving us the perfect deafening, mufflers or whatever you want to call them, the headphones, so we don't have to listen to these people who are telling us it's all inside. Deal with your psychology. No, we want to deal with ecology. It's a question of meteorology, not psychology. Great, we're all for that.
Do you think that all of this now also is going faster and faster? It's getting, in a sense, then warmer and warmer and more severe, maybe also as a kind of consequence of that because of that we are not looking at the inner world or the self.
Yes, it is. And of course I make a personal study of that a lot. I'm very troubled by what I see. I think a lot of the fauna death, these beachings of whales, these beachings of porpoises. You see, suddenly a huge, schools of fish go missing, death in the fauna. We had that tribulation about the bees. It turned out to be a bit of a hoax, but everyone knows that there's problems with the frogs, and there is a problem. Well, it's very easy to understand once you understand that there's an Earth grid, and the other Earth grid is absolutely an extension of human consciousness. people think that's a preposterous thing to say, then tell me how the internet works. There's no wires, right? There's digital space out there, and there's your stuff in front of your computer. Well, I'm talking the same thing. Just a higher frequency than what you see as digital today is this psychotronic energy, that comes from the unconscious mind that connects to the Earth, Mother Earth, Gaia. This is absolutely understood now. Bruce Lipton has talked about just how much of your unconscious mind operates. So that other brain, that ancestral brain, the racial memory, the unconscious, is working, and it is directly in dialogue with the Earth grid. And our toxicity, by not being dealt with on the upper end here, is back, just like a sewer, is therefore backing up. And the Earth grid then has to then go into a function in which it's cleansing human toxicity. It's not really meant to do that, but as we know, all Earth circuitry systems are compensatory. So the Earth grid then turns itself over to hygiene. But even it is now backing up. Because the human being refuses to deal with his own toxins. Remember the Native American Indians, the shaman, everyone from Bruce Lee onwards have been telling you, deal with your own issues, deal with your own problem. You are your own temple. How can you take what is it? The Bible says, how can you fix the sight of another when there's a big beam in your own eye? Your own sight is impaired, you see. All the greatest mystics have been telling you, deal with your own house first. If you troubleth your own house, you'll inherit the wind, right? Well, we are inheriting the wind now. But the thing is that this psychic toxicity, it's like a thing. I actually, in my eyes, see it as actual sewage. I think of it in very physical ways. And I think people should need to do that. This is backing up into the lifeblood, the capillaries, the veins, and the arteries of the Earth. It is and the lymphocytes of the Earth, which is the Earth grid, cannot deal with it. And therefore, that is backing up into the animals. Animal consciousness is now disaffected, you see. And highly sensitized, much more evolved animal species. Hopefully when we're talking about magic, we can get into this thing about the inanimate, so-called. They are now processing our toxicity. And this is why also the Egyptian gods had animal heads. It's also one of the reasons why the animals in India were sacred, like Shiva, who wore the horns and stuff like that, and sat upon the tiger, There's a Durga, Kali being the black goddess, but the serpents were around her, and the animal kingdom is very much involved in all ancient iconography. There's a reason for that. It's because these are the antenna of the Earth.
So, we talked a little bit about the New Age movements and Al Gore and the global warming cult, or what we should call it. One thing I did want to kind of sneak in here also is, how about the so-called, truth movement, or even the conspiracy movement? Do you think that also could be kind of a niche or a temporary escape for some people, or, a new cult to join for a while? Or
yeah, it's a fashion. It can easily be that. There's the heart of it, the true part of it, the research community, people who are dedicated to spiritual growth, dedicated to learning, dedicated to knowledge, philosophy. See, before philosophers were called philosophers, they were called sages. Sage. Philosopher was only a very recent word that came in Greece. Before that, the man who looked at the knowledge, in fact, the first person to ever use the term philosopher was Pythagoras, actually. Before that, they were called sages. And the sage is the Sophia. He's questing after the knowledge. And you will have that within that movement. And then, of course, you'll have all the, the people who join the bandwagon, thinking it's cool. And you get a lot of that. So, I try to distinguish in my work between the people who are just on the fashion part of it, and those who are really authentically involved. But you're going to find that in every era. It's not that the subject itself is bad.
No, definitely not. It might have stumbled upon the truth as.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. So okay. So sorcery is twofold. Not only to perpetuate the inauthentic life, but also to act adversarially to the authentic man or life. It's an adversarial energy as a counteractive force to those who try to awaken to an authentic life.
Right. This is extremely important for people to realize, that sorcery is not just one form of action. It's not just the creation and the sustainment and the perpetuation of what we call the inauthentic life. It has also got a dual aspect. Because there are authentic people in the world. There are virtuous people in the world who, either from birth or from later, snapping out of it, so to speak, are trying to pursue the real. Well, it's not going to be a bed of roses. It's not a scenic route by any means. quite the reverse. So anyone who's really been a truth seeker, or a person who's, what I would call a dharmic man, or the authentic man, is going to know all about that other kind of sorcery. Because it's the sorcery that is adversarial in nature, and it brings you the confusion, the loss, the alienation, the obstacles, the mental doubt, all that. It's mostly internal stuff. So let it be known, that the road is quite, lonely in a way, because the person who starts to seek for the truth will encounter this other action. Yeah, that is known to people. The great trials of Hercules, Odin, the story of Odin, of course, is hugely important with this. Siddhartha Road, the road of thorns. However, you see, there's no exception, and this is something you can't instill in somebody. It's just, to me, there's no alternative. One has to discover what the forms of oppression are, and one has to go through the suffering, or whatever you want to call it, of the authentic life.
The dark night of the soul.
The so-called dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
I believe that people are going to go through it anyway. It's just a perception thing. It's just what perspective you're at. I look at the people in a life of regimentation and conformity, those who are taking what's called a karmic role, as being in a greater form of pain, actually, in a way, because their soul is screaming. And they are harming themselves. Like Socrates said, to harm another is to harm oneself. Well, to harm oneself is to harm another. Those people are harming themselves. They're not living the life that they've come here to live. And the search for that is not sorcery, it's magic. But you're absolutely right. Sorcery is also this adversarial shield or cloaking that prevents you from understanding the magic of life. It's there to distort you. It's there to distract you. Remember in the beginning of Monty Python, The Meaning of Life, when all they're sitting around the walnut table after they've discovered all the things that, life is all about, and the big secret, and they talk about, well, the problem why people are not enlightened is because they get distracted, and then he gets distracted right away, right, like looking out the window. Well, that's the moment of sorcery,
Yeah.
And they will literally, in that movie, a building, right, a skyscraper is toppling to hit their skyscraper. That's beautifully done, because literally the sorcery will magnify itself to any magnitude to get you to be distracted. From the most smallest thing, you see, to the biggest event, constitutes a form of distraction. And so my message is that then the study of those forms of distraction becomes very important. Not looking for what enlightenment is. No. That's become totally meaningless now. Now what is important is your discovery of all the elements of distraction. That's the truly creative, mind that starts to discover, okay, there's adversarial action. How does it work?
And the things that you're traumatized by, or feel like a phobia or something, they will grow and become, larger and larger as because
if
you're
you
more...
don't understand that they're operating on you from outside. If you think they're auto-generated, then of course you're caught in them forever, thinking it's my problem, my this, my that. When you realize that these things are, built into the universe, that they're there to impede you, then you change your perspective and you start looking at them more as a detective, and they lose power over you. But that's another huge sort of investigation as to this. I just want to mention for now that there are these two forms of sorcery. There's many forms of sorcery, but the two main ones is that the manufacture of the inauthentic life, now that you've chosen that, and the resistance factor to those who are trying to escape from the inauthentic life. All those things that might hold you back from progress. And I see it a lot. I see people complaining all the time, I can't do it, it's too much, I suffer too much, there's too much alienation, I feel there's too much loss in my life. Where's this going? And people are very interested in, look, is this worth it?
Can I gain something from it? Or,
So I say, well, why are you concerned about that now? There's sorcery happening now, see? If you're doing it for its truth, you don't question, is it going to work out tomorrow? The question is, are you doing it for the real motive right now? Does it feel good now? Is this something you really want to do? And if it's not, have the courage to go back to the other way. Nobody's judging you, If you can't manage it, that's fine, then you give up.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about magic, dive into that now? About true magic and what it might be, and in opposite to sorcery, and how people can, discover the magic in their own lives and so forth? Yeah,
well, see, basically sorcery, it's not really that easy to define magic. That's why we have to mostly define what sorcery is. What is anti-magic? Because, and again, remember, we're up against a huge wall of what people think magic is, which is mostly phony rubbish, put there by the media and see storybooks, again, the wand waving, enhancing your ego, and all of that. That's not what it is at all. But sorcery, let's just recap it, is anything that interferes or distorts the true and natural action of anything. We're talking about human progress here. That which gets in the way or disaffects anything natural. So you have something that's happening naturally, which is man's growth, his evolution, his development, his free thinking, his discovery of himself and the world. Well, we'll be talking about all the things that get in the way of that. That's sorcery. Sorcery is that which interferes or distorts the true and natural organic action of anything, right, from outside. Something that perverts natural function. And we are living in a world of that. But we have perceived that, magic is often the working of one mind or a mind over other minds. No, that's not magic, that's sorcery. When one mind is trying to, operate over another mind, because people say mind over matter, like you read in the beginning, or mind over mind. Well, that's what these sorcerers are doing. They are trying to operate mentally over you. And if you give them the right to do that, then you will be the, disciple or apostle of sorcery, as they are. It's the, as we said, the creation, it's the maintenance of what we see all around us. But you see, that this true black art, what people have got to understand, is that this black art is operating to block out true creativity.
Yeah.
Magic is the discovery of yourself and what true creativity is, because where there's creativity, there's selfhood. Right? But where there's technology, not so. In one of the DVDs, I think it was Divination and the Goddess, I talk about what technology is and why it came about. Technology is nothing more than, or science is nothing more than rivalry of the female, the female power to give birth. It was seen as so magical and so on that man wanted to simulate that. And so technology was kind of born.
Would you categorize that as something unnatural then?
Yes. Yeah, in a way. Because the motive of it was to rival. I don't think that technology is the true expression of the masculine principle. I think it's a distortion of the masculine principle, because it was born out of rivalry. What man's real purpose is on Earth, if he's not meant to be involved in science and technology, is a really big question. And I tend to then become, I'm very intrigued by what Heidegger, the philosopher, was saying as what man's true role is. It's a little bit hard to explain, though. He was talking about something very different than just, this commitment of man towards this Dr. Strangelovian sort of technology of making his children his mechanical children, dehumanizing the world, you see, and conquering nature and conquering the feminine, right? He was talking about more, he expressed it by poetic terms in which he called man as the shepherd of being, that man's true role was to shepherd being. Again, that's like a 2-hour show right there, start explaining the ins and outs of all of that. But in the same DVD, I do remember now that what our problem is not only that the ego is fragile, not only that it's terribly fragmented and therefore susceptible to control, but that the Eastern people in Indian philosophy, they talk about Maya, right? Yeah, meaning the illusion. Yeah. Right? But in the DVD, Divination of the Goddess, I refute the meanings that have been given to that word, just like I refute the traditional definitions of Dharma and Karma. So I also refute the traditional Indian interpretation of Maya, and explain in the DVD that Maya is not that the world or matter is illusionary, sucking your spirit down, holding you from truth, but that the real Maya, the true meaning of the word, was your ideas about the world and your ideas about matter is Maya. So it's not that the world is evil or lower, or matter is lower or false or spirit denying, you see, but man's inauthentic ideas about something, particularly about the world, particularly about matter, his deviant, perverse, irrational, you see, understandings of the world around him is Maya. So it's again in his brain. So, and the sorcerers use this. The Indians also call that state avidya.
Avidya?
Yeah, avidya. Because vidya means knowledge, like the Vedas. Avidya, or aveda, means no knowledge, ignorance.
Okay, yeah.
So ignorance, according to the true interpretation of in Eastern mysticism, is that avidya, or karma, is created from a false understanding of the world around you, or of yourself. I've talked about it in other programs with you, about the idea we have of reality as opposed to what reality is itself. That's avidya. So if there is any action of magic at all, if magic has a physical application, then it is to remove that avidya and to get rid of those false understandings about the world. William Blake referred to it as mind-forged manacles. We've got manacles on the mind. Or, like he said, our perception is not infinite.
So we could say, to tie this back to the sorcery in the media, for instance, because that in a sense is about creating this false image of the world and just focusing on all the problems that we see out there, and this a lot of people they get their version of reality through the TV, so they look upon that and say, oh my God, the world is collapsing, it's falling apart, everything is bad, it's gone.
You're being
bad.
traumatized.
Yeah.
And you're being offered a new, inauthentic model of reality. This is where the media is, two aspects of the media. We talked about two aspects of sorcery, but the media has two-pronged attack as well. One is to traumatize you so that your own inner republic is in complete ruins. They love that. Look around at the teenagers today. Do you see anything that's not in ruins? And the second prong attack is, now we're going to manufacture for you the model of reality that we want you to have. Okay, right? So now they've got this shit that you see on, television every day, every morning. Yeah. So they've traumatized and eviscerated your own natural, imaginative quality, your scent of yourself, your awareness of yourself, and they're going to replace it with this hologram, this phantasmagoria that they cough up, they spew up, and everybody's into it.
5 minutes later, the commercial's on, this is the new car, the new entertainment,
the new look,
movie,
or the new hero, the new hero up the pop charts, as Paul Simon has declared it. So this is their pronged attack, and that's a form of sorcery. And remember, they don't mind also offering you what looks like a very hygienic reality. Remember, you'll see yoga poses. I've gone into this in my DVD on the subversive use of symbolism. They'll sure sell you subliminally. How many advertisements you see with halos of light and crucifixes and crosses and androgyny, right? And sacred animals, and you'll see all sorts of Christian imagery in the commercials, and people sitting in yoga poses with these sublime looks on their faces. We'll remove you from your depression. We're going to create a world of smiling depressives. This is going to be a dictatorship without tears. We got a perfect world for you. Here's pills. Here's everything is at your fingertips that you could want. And there we are with James, our James Bond perfect, little roulette wheel reality. It's all conjured up by those, witch doctors, sorcerers, and people are into it. That's it. They're not. They become cynical, not critical. I want people to be as critical as hell. I want them to be totally judgmental. I want them to use that reason. I want, like Anthony Robbins says, pump it. I'll advocate that. Pump it till it hurts. Yeah, your reason, your critical ability, your judgment. But what's happening is that the media is turning that off. It's turning it down. Oh, don't criticize. Don't. Oh, no. That's too much trouble. So all these abilities you see are being weeded out. They're being slowly suppressed by schools and by the media. And these are mind-forged manacles around people's minds to make them narrower and narrower. And there's nothing on this earth more narrow-minded than the average teenager. And yet they're running around thinking they're the most open-minded people because they can wear, green army jackets and, camouflage pants and ride a skateboard, and be into all sorts of kinds of music. There's nothing more narrow-minded on the face of the earth than the average teenager. You don't see 40, 50-year-olds going spray canning, beautiful neighborhoods and leaving their garbage around everywhere, So this is, again, another one of the illusions that we have. You can't get through to most people. Because they're into what the media has provided. They're already overstimulated with all that rubbish and the nonsense and the fake forms of authenticity sold to them as reality. Look at the punk movement. These leaders of the punk movement are all sitting in Beverly Hills in big mansions. Billy Idol and, Johnny Rotten, all living it up. Multi-millionaires, right, living up the world. And then 5 minutes before that, they're like, wearing the communist, their anarchist T-shirts and all of this stuff. We're against. Oh yeah. Yeah. If people haven't woken up, right,
Geldof and Bono.
Oh my God, total examples of that. Yeah. Sickening, getting down on their knees in front of the royals. Don't even start talking to me about that.
You know, and we also have the aspect of people trying to figure out modern culture. We have a lot of people that want to. The modern culture in itself is a mystery, and what's in, what's hot, what's not. You know, and you want to try to stay azure with that. You want to try to figure it out. What should you wear? What, you know, all these problems within the fashion or you know, the conventional society itself.
There's so many cliques, so many splinter groups, so many chic, you know, little subcultural cliques that now you're completely overwhelmed. And again, this is remember we talked about in previous shows how the ego loves to troubleshoot the problems it makes, and which you can be caught forever, as most people are caught forever. You know, they don't look at why has my mind manufactured a problem. No. They're disciples of fixing the problem instantly. This is where the psychology doesn't exist. Like the global warming, we have a problem. No, you've manifested a problem. The psychologist now looks at why you have manifested this problem. What's going on that you have developed for yourself? I mean, completely out of the thin blue, you know, the clear blue sky, you have manufactured a problem. So you see, the sage or the mystic doesn't see a problem. He doesn't acknowledge that. He doesn't get into that at all.
It's a totally different mindset, because I mean, in a way, if you should try to explain that to someone who looks at the raw data, so to speak, you know. But, you know, it's right here on the paper. Greenhouse gases bump up. Here we go. That's the problem.
And
right
I'm ready
there,
to go.
know.
I got my toolkit. I'm suited up. We've put money into this. The car is revved up. What the hell are you stopping me at the door saying, can we study your psychology? You know? No, I'm ready to go. We're going to climb that mountain. We're going to do it. We're going to fix it. That's hardwiring. That's, you know, and this is what is going on. And the politician, you see, is the smartest asshole who's been able to climb amongst everybody else. He's above the psychologist. He's above the philosopher. He has sort of plowed through the crowd to say, it's me. I am the one who will fix all your world problems. So it's not a philosopher up there talking about global warming. It's not a psychologist. And guess what? It's not a weather expert. It's not a meteorologist. It's a bloody politician. And they're all happy with this. No. This is a meteorological problem. Can I please see a meteorologist talking about it? Even if I'm going to buy into it, I might want to see a meteorologist talking about the problem, or somebody who's, you know, lived his whole life in that fold.
Studying that.
What's Al Gore doing up there? Championing in it? Because this is what the sorcery is all about. It's about Big Daddy, you know. It's not about the facts, you know. And if you listen, of course, to Stan Monteith and the other people who've got the rebuttals to all of this, you'll find out the true story of how this whole global warming nonsense has been used to completely collectivize, you see, and manipulate human people. So this is the act of sorcery. We're not interested in the facts, and we tool up. We're just dying to kit up and mount up and go in search of all of these causes, these Don Quixote windmills, you know, to feel a sense of empowerment, because we are eviscerated of any inner power. We're also outer directed. What I mean specifically by that, and this ties into what magic is that the person who's involved in the magic, as opposed to the sorcery, is a person who is inner directed, meaning that he's not waiting for life to turn him on. Life has its stimuli, and that's fine. I'm not talking about living in an Orwellian, bleak, empty world where nobody does anything. No. But I'm just saying that in the magical person, the dharmic person is not waiting for life to turn him on. His meaning of life is given from himself. In other words, most people in the world that you meet are waiting for life to give them meaning. And I really mean it in exactly that way. If you could portray somebody sitting like a couch potato in a big armchair, you know, turn me on. I demand, you know, that the TV and the girlfriend and the world and the neighbor and the world system and the game and the ball game and, you know, turn me on. I want that because I have no inner life.
Entertainment again, going to the movies and, you know, the roller coaster ride, anything.
Bringing nothing from within. Now, the dharmic person is somebody who he hasn't even thought about that. He is so motivated. He realizes that life has no meaning. It only has the meaning you give it. Man is a meaning machine. He's meant to bring meaning from within himself and bring it out onto the world. Otherwise, life will have no meaning. Or if you don't want to do that, then don't cry in my ears about the life you're living. If you do not want to bring meaning from within yourself, then happily take the pre-packaged, pre-digested, you know, literally packaged, formulaic stuff that is provided for you. Here is your TV dinner. Here, sir, is your meal. You know what I mean? Just slide the card, and here it is. We give you your meaning. And millions upon millions of people are happy to do that because they refuse point blank to bring meaning from within themselves.
Humans are cheaper than machines. The perfect robot again. Work for the system, work for keeping all of this in place. And at the meantime, on the other hand, you have an agenda. They can get from the human race, what they want, the perfect worker bees, and we get our, we get to be plugged into the matrix and be entertained by it.
Yes, because the beauty of the system, that inauthentic system, is that the government does listen. Big Daddy is absolutely all ears to hear you screaming, I don't want to create meaning for my life. You do it. They go, thank you. Thank you. The vampire says, come over my door, but enter in of your own free will. You must give your power to them. Then they run. Then they're busy, like bees, creating the meaning for you. And you cannot now go back. There's no retraction at that point. You've given them the rights to do this. You've turned off your mind. You've turned off your creation. Now, the magical way is to strip you from those roles, to make you question those roles, to give you the confidence to leave those roles. Magic is about educating you into the fact that the sorcery exists, so that you can defeat it. It's to make you polyphrenic, as opposed to monophrenic. Single-functioned, hyper-focused. Polyphrenic, creative as opposed to inventive. Mutable. Like we said, the moksha, the true transcendence of good and evil, right, is not trying to fix good and evil in the world, but fixing your attitudes towards those things. You are in control of your attitudes towards good and evil. Instead of having a single-directed intelligence, have what is known as omnidirectional intelligence. Different kind of attitude. Reintroducing yourself to what's called the inanimate is a very big part of this. That there's a whole world of living things around you, but you don't see it because you've been taught to believe that animals and trees and even stones and rocks and mountains are dead. You may not admit that, but you've basically been trained to believe that. That the only thing that deserves your attention is the human being.
Yeah, you mentioned this before, about the relationship to nature itself, or a tree, or a mountain, or a rock, or whatever.
It's purely functional. It's purely secondary. It doesn't even rate anymore. And that's the reason, is because human beings give us back all the cues and affectations that little ego needs. And so the 100% of a person's attention goes into human interactions, and hence pain is the end of that. That's not endorsed by the higher force. It's not acceptable for you to merely be relating reciprocally one ego to the other. Because remember, the ego only knows that it exists by relativity to other egos, by the way. Okay, the ego knows it exists in company of other egos. Right? Schopenhauer says the world is my idea. Right? So by connectivity, by nextness, the ego's existence is based on its relativity to other egos. And therefore, that's why it's so human-directed. But there's a whole world, an animal kingdom, a natural kingdom, light. Do people have a relationship with light? They never think about it. The air that, moves, the breath, the prana, you see, the constant changing of the sky, the water. Are the elements your best friends? You see, the elements are my best friends. You say that, you're like, they're ready to lock you up. But do you have a personal relationship with the ocean? Or with trees? Salvador Dali would never come to a friend's house without running over and hugging the cedar trees there. Put his arms around these cypress trees and just stand there, hugging these trees. That's an authentic man. He's not a crank. Have you ever seen anybody like Van Gogh paint, the cypress tree? He had a personal relationship with those trees. He had a personal relationship with the night sky. That's why he's Van Gogh. Right? Rembrandt, Vermeer. My God. Look at the relationship that Vermeer, the artist, had with light. Light is human to him. Right? Light is a thing. It's a teacher. It's a mentor. It's a god. Did you know that in the pagan times, in the Celtic times, trees were gods? Please understand this. Trees were gods. The sacred grove was considered so sacred that a tree was considered an oracle, literally an angelic form. Yeah. And some trees more than others, of course. But the miracle of all of this stuff that's happening around is just considered the inanimate. So people go, what is magic, Michael? Magic is that thing that is already happening as soon as you open your eyes in the morning. It's not something you attain or you find or you join some secret society in order to be, attaining at the end of some sort of initiation ceremony. It's the initiation of opening your eyes in the morning. As soon as you open your eyes in the morning, before the whole ego, machinery begins, right, of all this other stuff, the actual act of being in the world is magic. Sorcery is what tries to hide you from that. Now, Heidegger brought this out because he pointed out that the word Danken in German, which means thank you, and the word for thinking, denken, right, is the same word.
That's right.
They're very similar. They're from the same root. So in other words, he's saying that thinking should be an act of gratitude. Is an act of gratitude. Not should be. The man's thought is a process, a mantra of thank you to the universe. Thank you for existence. He even speaks very clearly about the opening of the physical eye in the morning. And when the light hits the pupil of the eye, he calls that a spiritual experience. That the fact that you've awoken to the miracle of the day. You know, we say good morning, or I think in Swedish is god morgon. So
right.
God morgon. You're not saying that to some punter in the street. That was never a statement originally was meant for, you know, some other goon. God morgon was good morning to the morning. To, in other words, to this thing that is now considered inanimate. You walk around in a thing called a day. You are embraced by a thing, you know, called a day. Henry Bergson talked about that time embraces you like a brother. He called it the elan vital. With the word, look how beautiful, the word vital means vital, life.
Vital.
He called time that. That time is a thing, is an entity that you can talk to, that you can relate with. But you ignore it all of your life.
Something you fight instead.
Well, of course, now it's adversity again. This is the sorcery has come in. You have no dialogue with that. So this is where the fragmentation, aloneness, alienation is, because you are self-alienated, because you put your entire psychic focus into other equally depressed, equally lost, equally fragmented, equally existentially, you see, lost individuals. So it's a chorus of the same kinds of people, and you've lost your earth, you've lost your roots. You know, the old, there's an old alchemical statement, you know, which says, come to the center of the earth, and there you shall find the philosopher's stone. Come to the center of the earth. Again, they're pulling you to the earth. They're saying, it's here, the altar of the earth, this immediacy of your life. Thought and thinking are the same word. You know, it begins with, another way to express it is to say that, look, it's not experience. You shouldn't be demanding that experience is always fresh and new. It's the mind of the experiencer that needs to be fresh and new. What we have are these people with a dead mind going, turn me on! More stuff! More stimuli! That was good, but now we want better! More! I'm dead. Animate me! Like a dead horse is being injected with adrenaline every 5 seconds. Then we wonder why the world's in the state that it's in. The mind is what needs to be continually incarnating, refreshed. Not experience. This is what the world has to understand. Or another way to look at it is how we did in the Future of Mankind, looking at the meaning of the etymology of the word enlightenment. Can we stop thinking of in terms of luminescence, which is this very masculine, solaristic, atomistic way of looking at things, and re-look at it like lightness, like the feather, the balloon, the fool card. You know, lightness, not accumulating, attaining, acquiring, having. But letting go.
Likeness of the mind, taking things on a lighter note in a way.
Yin, what they call yin. One of the secondary meanings of the word yin. Letting go, divestiture, allowing, non-attaching, you see. Emptying out so you can always be full.
Non-controlling also in a way.
Yes, very much. You know, you're not in control anyway. That's just another one of these illusions.
Right?
Another way to look at it is instead of trying to embrace, allow yourself to be embraced. So there's two. You know, one's an acquisitive. I want the truth. I want Jesus. I want God. I want it. I have it. But we're not hearing ourselves. We're not hearing ourselves. We're not listening to the nonsense of that. You think that your encompassment is ever going to, you know, put the real in your pocket? Can you put the mountain in your pocket? Can you harness the power of the tiger or the lamb or the stag? You can't own that, you see. You can't own the polar bears. You can't own the oceans of the world. But you can dive into it. You can let it embrace you. So man needs to change. This is what this Nuthan Hadith of Crowley was. This is what this prolific and devouring. Blake is saying you can devour or you can be prolific. Right? There's two ways. Man has a choice. I like to always put it that I always describe it in my work as throwing away the oars. And it's a concept people don't like. I have a lot of resistance against this. But I've always put it that there's the river. And on this great river, and I mean the river of time, this is the Elan Vital, it's not but you can pictorialize it as a physical river. I'm looking at is this the river that carries the cosmos along? This is the great river that they said the Maya spoke of, that is the river of creation, that pulls all the planets, all the stars, all the systems along with it. It's the river of time, the river of reality. That's a silent river that we don't hear anymore because of our own clatter. Now on that river is our life. We're born, you see, not into the world, because when you say somebody's born into the world, you're implying that they're separate from it. You're born from the womb of the world. You're born from the womb of the universe. You're absolutely part of the universe.
And you're made from even the atoms itself. You borrow them on the short time you were here, and then you return them to the source.
And your dementia thinks of that universe, that womb, as a hierarchy when it's really a holarchy. But you're born into this movement, and you deafen yourself to the movement because on the river is the boat. And the boat is consciousness. And the boat is, as we said, a creation out of the womb of the world. But on the boat is oars. And the oars is the ego. And the oars is the ego of you thinking you are directing your life. That's sorcery. The magic is to let go of the oars and to let the boat go on the river wherever the river wants to take it. And that's a completely different action. One is Taoist, the other is this other monstrous dimension, dementia we've got. Oh, no, I can't trust the river. Give me the oars, quick. Row. And then you row yourself into a crevasse. You row yourself into a whirlpool. You see, you're banging up against other people's boats, losing direction. And some idiots even want to go out against the tide.
No, yeah.
The super ego man, right?
Yeah.
Which you can name a few of those. But, so the gods look down and they laugh. They put the oars there to see where we're at. The Donald Duck moron who's in the boat there, paddling away, is the one who's absolutely caught in his own ego, thinking, if I don't paddle, I'm not getting nowhere. It's all about effort. It's all about me. There's my picture of Anthony Robbins, and I've learned how to do it. Give me the oars and get out of my way. And although the universe rains down horrors of pain and suffering onto that kind of person's life, they'll never learn. They just don't learn. Because they get to like the sound of their oars and the adrenaline of feeling they're directing their own life. But the real art of life, which is the magic of life, which is the enlightenment, is to let go of the oars. And then slowly acculturate yourself to the sound of the river. Because that river, by the way, for all your paddling and for all your rowing and for all your histrionics, is taking you precisely where it wants you to go. So you can spend your whole life rowing and it ain't going to matter at all because the river is still master. In fact, I would believe that all your rowing is just basically sending you up shit creek. It's not only a futile waste of time that you'd almost want to cry, you almost want to laugh if it wasn't so sad, which most people are doing. It really is a predicament. But in the end, it's not even taking you to where you need to go anyway, because the river is ultimately going to decide. But you could exhaust. The only time that most people are now, this is what I have a problem, you see, with a lot of the New Age movement and where we're heading in the world now, is that certain people are now waking up to the sound of the river, not out of choice, but because they've literally exhausted their energy.
Burned out.
They're burned out.
Yeah.
Now, okay, I'm kind of glad that you're hearing the sound of the river because you're burned out, but it's still not the most optimum way. It would have been so much better had you had the guts and the power and the faith in the river to throw away the oars in the beginning. But see, no. Man of the inauthentic life, the man of the metropolis, doesn't want to hear anything about that. He's not interested in hearing about it. He's going, what are you talking about? We know what you're all about. I'm not meant to go like that. I'm meant to command, have my life. My life is me. This false, remember I told you the false selling, they're selling us the false idea of individualism, just as they sell us a false understanding of freedom. Well, don't you understand when America's screaming and yelling about, we're the country of the individual. Individualism is what it's all about. That's the false. That's the circus concoction, the paper mache version of the real freedom, the real individuality. There's nothing, even a shred of it. They didn't. Ayn Rand was the only one that I can think of who talked in true terms in America of what that individualism is. So, a better relationship with the inanimate and the dropping of that word completely. Back to a pantheistic pantheism where everything is living. Bringing meaning from within yourself. Throwing away the oars. And throwing away the oars, by the way, has been known for centuries. In India, they call it void magic. The Druids and the ancient shaman knew that there's positive and negative magic, and then there's another kind of magic that they refer to as void magic. Void magic, in which you touch on the void to give you the power that you require. But that requires letting go. Any kind of action of will, you see, and thinking of that you're in control of the universe is opposite. You work with the universe. But first you have to be tutored by that universe. Just like anyone goes to school, you have to first learn the ropes, don't you?
Yeah.
So man wants to already be, especially the politician is the extreme example of this delirium, or this dementia, is that long before he's even tutored as how the universe or nature works, he's already going to run the class. He's already going to, it's like a guy jumping into a Formula One racing car and trying to do the, Indianapolis or whatever it is, He's going to end up in the, where he's going to end up? He's going to end up in a ball of fire,
That's right.
and take in so many other people with him.
Yeah.
You can't get on a stallion, thoroughbred, stallion, and start riding without knowing how to work it.
Yeah.
So man is already taking the reins of the universe without instruction. He's killed the instructors. They're all massacred, martyred, and nailed, and dead, and murdered.
Yeah.
And now he's taking the reins himself, and then wondering why he's in a ditch. I'm completely happy that he's in a ditch. I want people to end up in the ditch, because you will not break certain cardinal rules of the universe. I want you to be in angst, because I know why that angst is being brought on. And I'm not in any way threatened by it, those darker emotions. You refuse to keep them, listen to this, all these voices. So of course they become dark. Because once upon a time when they were speaking, you didn't listen. So they've become, you see, repressed. Those voices are repressed, and then they take on a different likeness. So this new understanding, compassion. Let's think of the word compassion etymologically as complete passion. Complete passion about your life, bringing it from within yourself. Another way of looking at it has again been explained in The Future of Mankind. Try in every problem that you come across in your life, voice it differently. What's the languaging? Are you saying I've been sold a lie, or are you saying I've bought a lie? I'm going to recap that. It's very important to restate this, because again we need to snap out of the psychology of thinking, oh, somebody's doing bad by me.
Externally.
Externally. What am I permitting to take place? And finally, it comes from Plato, but Plato, Socrates were always asked by the people there in the symposium, tell us about, the spirit. What happens in the spirit world? Tell us what it's like to be transcendent being, and what lies after death. And he would never address that. He would say, look, my only concern is to get you to the human level. What are you worrying about what the gods are doing? You're at the subhuman level, and my job is merely to get you to the human level. You don't even know what it is to be human yet. Because you think you're already at human level, I'm telling you what to do, on the divine level. That's way, way, way far away. You shouldn't be concerned with that. And it's really true that today the job of any philosopher is to continue to do that process, is to get people to understand what it means to be truly human. Discover your own capacities. All possibilities are only open to the man who's open to all possibilities,
That's right.
who allows himself to be that way.
Yeah.
The person who has set no limits for himself, he's unlimited. He cannot ever come to the limit of who he is.
Yeah.
And therefore you will find yourself in a form of opposition against all those people who have chosen the other way. You will find yourself as being an outsider. But again, lose that sense of alienation by turning yourself on to those inanimate friends that are just waiting for you there, hungering for your presence, hungering for your dialogue. The universe is your teacher. Nature is your teacher. Learn from nature. Nature is what they call, there's a philosophy called, or it's a science, I guess, called negentropia. Ever heard of that? Negentropia. N-E-G-E-N. Negentropia, or negentropic. And that's what the universe is. See, the universe's order is not plugged in. You don't find a socket where the universe is plugged in, so that the sun and the moon and the clouds and the rain, where's its energy bank? It's what's called negentropic. It's self-developing, self-perpetuating, and self-regulating. So we need to be, studying that every morning. Bruce Lee said, every morning, like a scholar at his first class, I prepare a blank mind for the day to write upon.
That's nice.
That summarizes everything that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow doesn't exist. Find the void. Find the still point. And from that place, draw your energy and resist any force, or have zero tolerance for any force that stops you from doing that. Because as we said, there is an adversarial energy. Because I believe what I'm talking about is man's true destiny. He would be doing this if he wasn't already, in a form of dementia. But that dementia, that infection, that epidemic is caused by external forces that I address in my work and that people need to know about.
Everything that draws away your attention or from you being focused on what you want to do for
is your study,
during your day, or
is your homework.
Yeah.
And I want to see people with their heads down
Mm.
and taking real notes on that one. That people I want to see total and utter, awareness of all these factors, and some of them are political, and some of them are environmental, and there's all sorts. There's all people that can come to the table at this. I don't rule out anything.
Yeah.
Yes, there are many forms. There's psychotropica, there's pharmacopoeia, there's mind control through the television, there's mercury. We're talking about a lot of different. We know. Hopefully, the listeners are aware of this is manifold. Because as we said, a web is not created with one thread.
Yeah.
A puppet is not dangled with one string. There's
right.
many goes on here, and become students of this, not pessimistically, but think of this as your enlightenment.
Yeah.
This is enlightening you. It's
Yeah.
lightening you above the rest of it, so that you can start to see what is going on, to
Yeah.
get that perspective.
Not getting down by the
No, no,
information
no.
itself. This is an opportunity. First you have to. I don't know if we want to call it a problem, because again then we go back to the all of that aspect. But first you have to recognize and see what is the problem for you to be able to do something about it. In a way. So this is an opportunity.
And look at how man has manufactured these problems. And as I say, it all boils down to his contract with himself from the earliest days to lose his psychic sovereignty and his selfhood. The ego is all about that, and it learned that out of its weakness, out of its great fragility. It started to need this sort of scaffolding, and therefore it fell victim to the black art. It really did. And so every voice, every phenomena that comes in to stop this action of life, this allowance, I consider is a sorcery, negative. And people can read more about this on the Weapons of Mass Deception found article that I wrote. It's on the forum, or they can email me for it. There's a lot of explanations on there about that, the divination and the goddess DVD, because being and doing is another division we didn't talk about. There's another component to this about the being and the doing, and the difference between those two. We talked about it a little bit, but again, life and lifestyle. What today we have is lifestyle, not life. Very few people are living, but they're certainly into lifestyle because they've bought that whole prefabricated, packaged imagery that the world has been throwing. And realize that things like good and evil, they are built into the universe. They're in the architecture of the universe. You can't do anything about good and evil, but you can do something about your attitude towards those realities. You're in control of that.
That's right. So I think that is an excellent point to round things up on here. Is there anything else you want to get through to this? Again, we've been talking about the differences here between sorcery and magic, and what you can do about it to get into the magical concepts more, and also as a help to all the all the problems and all the mess we see out there in the world, and that it's something that comes from within yourself, the development of yourself, and even how you view the problem and so forth. But what would you recommend one of your DVDs to dive into more of this divination and the goddess?
Yeah, divination and the goddess, because in that one I talk about this very serious problem between karma and dharma, being and doing, and specifically this illusion of Maya is something outside yourself. Maya is illusion, but it's your ideas about things that is of the illusionary quality here. And the priests, you see, turned this around. They were very cunning. If they could make Maya the world, and if they could make Maya matter, well, then they can sell you this idea that your spirit is caught in matter. And now you need us to help you to get out of it. So a priest class is born. And of course, with Maya goes the female, and goes the feminine, you see, and goes the animals. And the whole circus starts up by a misinterpretation that it's your perceptions about reality that is the illusion. And so this whole priestarchy started to operate over there, not to liberate man, but to further enslave them. Turning them off from the real meaning of the word. So I'll go into that in the Divination and the Goddess DVD. I go into this thing about technology, about what is technology, why did man even get into science and technology, you see. And also to realize that it's not so much that magic is the operation of mind over matter, which is totally, it does happen, as we said, that action does happen, they scientifically proved it.
Yeah.
But magic is really more the understanding of how the universe is changing you. See, one is from an egoistic point of view of how I affect change in the world. Man, it's almost like the child mind is obsessed with this. How do I wave my magic wand? Meaning, how does my ego, how does my existence affect everything around me? Why don't people, study how the world affects you? Like, for instance, when you drink a glass of water, you are aware that you've changed that water by your drinking. But are you aware also that that water has changed you forever in that simple act? No, we're not. See, it's one-sided. Now, I've learned this from Rilke, the poet, and from Blake and from other Heidegger, Bergson. They're talking about this, about are we really subtly aware of how the things around us affect and change us forever, and how we're constantly a different person every day. It's like that Bruce Lee thing. I reincarnate myself every day. His mind is fresh and new. He's the blank slate. So are we really going through this living life process of being aware? Remember, you read it in the early part where is magic that which affects us on all levels at once? Yeah, well, okay, if magic is that which affects us on all levels at once, meaning what? Emotionally, sensationally, intellectually, and so on, and physically, then how many things constitute magic in your life then? There must be very few things, isn't it, for most people? Okay, we can say it's obvious, artwork, beautiful artwork. You can't look at Vermeer or Bruegel, because these were men who were enraptured with those other inanimate, friends. They had that family that we don't have. And so their paintings were to share that voice with you. So we can say that art is an expression of that, that affects us on all levels at once. Music, certainly. That's why people love music. It's because it's affecting them not just emotionally or or intellectually, but on all levels at once. Good music will do that.
And just, think of the artist themselves, because they spend a lot of time actually trying to see what in order to be able to paint the way they do, because in most cases they do paint, environments or objects in a way, but they spend a lot of time learning on what it actually is and studying it a lot of time. And in that process, I think that becomes a spiritual process.
Isn't it magic? To know how to mix colors?
Yeah.
In fact, do you know that during the time of the guilds and the time of the artisans, mixing colors was so sacred that only certain people could do it? Today in Tibet, it's still considered one of the greatest art. That sand paintings that they do, those mandalas that they draw and then they destroy afterwards? The whole science of color, the whole science of mixing colors, the mystery of the color gray, for instance. You can get into a 2-hour program just about gray, the color gray, and how significant that is. And you can go into the whole thing about the Kabbalah with this, color, whole thing with color. But the mixing of color, the ritual of letting the colors teach you. Do you have a relationship with color? Nobody has a relationship with it. No. On and on and on. Once you start becoming awakened into the whole what the inanimate world can teach you, architecture. For me, just looking at the architecture, the buildings, is an incredible enlightening experience. And how light plays on certain kinds of buildings and the whole inanimate thing. I've always been into that. The beauty of a guitar or a piano, the beauty of a wood, on a beautiful table. And of course, this can involve the creations of men, obviously. Because of course the men who've created things based on their discovery and their learning from nature is perfectly acceptable. But a man who's a demented, tortured, mentally amputated, mutilated shard trying to build stuff in his antithesis, in his antipathy to nature, that's obscene. And that's what we're getting more and more of in our world, is nature being pushed back, from our dialogue. And this manufacture of this hideous, monstrous, anti-human type of world. We have to really come back into and I really believe that that's why a lot of the gods were portrayed in ancient times with animal form. This is one of the reasons, is because of what the animals can teach us, and what the so-called inanimate that we've been trained to believe is below us or lower than us. See, I don't believe that the dolphins and the whales are lower forms than us. I believe they're higher forms of life, actually. Absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that wolves, and people can laugh their heads off if they feel like it, but there was a reason why the Nagas, the ancient gods, were portrayed as serpents. You see, I got questions about this, and I've been looking into some of this stuff, and why certain animals were sacred. You had an interview with Andrew Collins in which he was talking at length about the vulture, and how important that was. Later, that morphed into the dove. The cygnus, and the swan. See, obviously Christianized it a little bit, but the utter significance that some of these animals had. The horse, look how significant the horse was to the Scythians and the Celts. These guys had the horses in their houses. Look at the Lord of the Rings, the story of the Rohan, the people of the riders of Rohan, right, and the relationships with their horse, connecting to Epona and the goddess, of the horse, and that the horse was not some blinking beast of burden to these people. It was their gods,
Sacred,
man. This was sacred.
Yeah.
What the hell, you know? The rat. You know, they have these beautiful temples to the rat over in India. Yeah, I love that. You know, I'm not going to go and worship some god in some temple, but open a temple to the rat, and I'm all for it. You know, and they literally do that. They have these rat temples where they feed the rats, and to me, that's absolutely what I'm talking about.
Nice.
The day of the rat will come, you know.
Very nice. Yeah, Michael. So round things up here. You know, we have might have new listeners with us and people who don't know about your DVD series and so forth. Give us out the website for that and what you would recommend again in connection to this interview and so forth.
Well, the DVDs are on Origins and Oracles because they're all one series, 6 DVDs box sets. You know, and you can look at all of that, including the Atlantis book, on originsandoracles.com, and if they go to michaeltasarian.com, that will get them to all the different websites I've got. I've got 6 or 7 websites, and certainly everyone's welcome to come on the new forum, which is the MSAR forum, MTSAR forum. It's at redicecreations.com /MSAR forum, and come on there and leave their comments. And also the forum is for putting up posts. See, a lot of what I do is collaborative. I rely on people to send me, you know, clips, material, editorials, amazing things that they discover, and then the forum is where we post all of this stuff so people can see that, you know, it embellishes what I'm talking about. Because people are discovering a lot of things around the world. This is a time of awakening. You know, the planet Pluto and the planet Uranus are operating to bring in a new spirit of rebellion, which is extremely important, and it's connected to the Holy Spirit, you know, the coming of the true Holy Spirit. And so there's a real awakening happening all around the world, and every day we're sent material saying, hey, you know, we found this in our local neighborhood, or this is going on, or look at the symbolism that I discovered. So I want people to really come by as much as they can to the forum and send us stuff, you know, and let's help open the eyes of the world. Definitely. So the forum again is at redicecreations.com /MSAR forum.
And I linked up just previously here the web streams, all the web streams that Michael have up there. Tons of free stuff to look through, and then, you know, when you're ready, head on over to originsandoracles.com and support Michael and get one of those DVDs, because that's excellent information on there. So again, Michael, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for spending your time with us here. We so much appreciate it.
That's a pleasure.